Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping came to power around the same time. Kim succeeded his father in December of 2011. Xi Jinping came to power a year later. So for more than a decade, they've had to deal with each other, right? They were the leaders of the two countries. But their relationship didn't start smoothly. Kim's father, Kim Jong-il, died in December 2011, and the junior Kim took over. Like I said, a year later, Xi Jinping replaced Hu Jintao. Now, at first, Kim leaned heavily on his uncle, his regent, and the second most powerful man in North Korea. His name is Jang Soo-taek. So Jang was the second most powerful man in North Korea. Now, at the time, after Kim Jong-il's death, Jang wanted to copy the CCP and started economic reforms in North Korea. And he was said to be the man that Beijing trusted the most in Pyongyang. All right, but this Jang had dangerous ambitions. 10 months after Kim Jong-il died, he visited China and met with Hu Jintao. In a private meeting with very few people in attendance, Jang told Hu Jintao that he planned to replace Kim Jong-un with his older brother, Kim Jong-nam, and Hu gave no clear answer, just saying that he would consider it, or he would need to think about it. Now, the conversation was somehow secretly recorded by Zhou Yongkang, China's security chief at the time, a Jiang Zemin loyalist who had kept a close eye on Hu Jintao. So Zhou Yongkang, the security chief of China at the time, this man had very close relationship with North Koreans. He led a Chinese delegation visiting North Korea in 2010, meeting Kim Jong-il 4 times in 3 days, and even appearing beside him at the military parade. He also met the young Kim Jong-un at that event. You could see him on the far left. Now, what happened after that is in early 2013, shortly before his downfall, Zhou Yongkang leaked the conversation Hu Jintao had with Jang, with Kim's uncle, a year earlier. By then, Xi Jinping was in charge in Beijing. That December, Kim executed his uncle in public. 4 years later, his half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, was assassinated in Kuala Lumpur. Beijing, which had quietly seen Kim Jong-nam as a backup option, was furious. Relations between China and North Korea hit a low point, defining the first 5 years of Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un's rule. The above story was reported by Japanese media in February 2018. So that's why Kim didn't visit China until March 2018, right before his diplomacy with Donald Trump during Trump's first term. So from 2018 to 2019, he made 4 trips to China, almost all related to his meetings with Trump. May 2018 in Dalian and June 2018 back to Beijing after the Singapore summit with Trump, and then January 2019 before the Hanoi summit. And Xi Jinping, for his part, has only visited Pyongyang once in June 2019. That's the first time a Chinese leader visited or to do so in 14 years. Let me talk about the relationship between Beijing and Pyongyang. For 2 decades, ties between Beijing and Pyongyang followed a consistent pattern. They quarreled from time to time, but essentially played a two-man act to extract benefits from the West. Back in late 2002, when North Korea withdrew from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the 6-party talks began with China, the U.S., Russia, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan, Washington's strategy was to rely on Beijing to mediate and rein in Pyongyang. And China and North Korea ran a kind of two-man act. Pyongyang would stir up trouble, Washington would call Beijing, and Beijing would step in as mediator, then demand markets, capital, and technology from the West. Once Beijing got benefits, North Korea would claim its share. So that cycle repeatedly went on for 2 decades, but is now over. With China, Russia, North Korea, and even Iran openly aligned, that routine of playing the West no longer works. Beijing cannot extract gains from Washington anymore, so the cooperation model has to change. And it is believed that this was the real focus of Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un's 1-hour meeting. The goal of their meeting is to discuss how to adjust the model, their model, right? And how to coordinate with Russia. let's talk about Russia. Back during the six-party talks, Russia was weak and China dominated the diplomacy. But after the war in Ukraine, Moscow needs North Korea. Pyongyang has stepped up, offering weapons, missiles, even manpower, and getting paid well in return. But what Russia once saw North Korea as a burden, now it sees it as a partner. That's why Putin flew to Pyongyang to sign a strategic partnership treaty, right? Instantly raising the relationship to a new level. So for China, some people say this is pressure. North Korea's economy once relied almost entirely on Beijing. Now with Russia as another lifeline, China's leverage shrinks. So some people argue that China may be worried about this, that it's losing leverage over North Korea. But other analysts do not believe so. They do not think that Xi Jinping fear losing control over North Korea. This is because their relationship is not defined by disagreements, but by a shared enemy. That's the United States and the wider West. The common adversary ensures that they stay aligned. And that's the case with Russia, China, and North Korea. So history shows the depth of North Korea's reliance on China is tremendous. So just think about it. In 2018, before Kim's first summit with Trump, he went to Beijing twice to seek CCP's advice. And then once more after the summit to report back. So would Kim Jong-un ever cut Beijing loose and rely only on Moscow? Of course not, right? He wouldn't do that. He just wants extra options for himself. Russia has technologies China can give him, while China gets other things from Russia. So in this triangular setup, Xi Jinping brings money and weapons, Kim Jong-un brings soldiers, Putin brings resources like oil and gas and agriculture products. It's a dependency chain. Kim wouldn't want to burn bridges with China. And for Xi Jinping, closer Russia-North Korea ties are not bad because the new bloc strengthens Beijing's hand. Now, let's talk about the nuclear issue. Trump spent his first term trying to persuade Kim Jong-un to give up his nukes. But once a dictator has nuclear weapons, I don't think he wants to give up, especially now with China, Russia, North Korea all aligned. The odds are even smaller, right? In the past, if Kim went too far, Beijing might rein him in to keep its deals with the West alive. But today, with no benefits left to gain, China has no reason to restrain Pyongyang. So North Korea will keep its arsenal and keep building more. Russia may even help. Because it's happy to see its partner grow stronger. So how do we prove this? Well, after the Xi Jinping-Kim Jong-un meeting, China's state press skipped one of its three long-standing principles on the Korean Peninsula. For decades, Beijing always talked about denuclearization, peace and stability, and dialogue. This time, they dropped denuclearization and only mentioned peace and stability. So that's a quiet but major shift. So it's obvious that China is tolerating North Korea's nuclear status to pressure Washington and Seoul. So I think to expect him to give up his nuclear weapons is impossible. And there's another curious observation. Now, Kim brought his 12-year-old daughter on the trip. So some people wondered if he brought her to Beijing sort of to seek an entrustment to Beijing. So a lot of people assume that Kim Ju-ai is Kim Jong-un's successor. But there are people who do not believe so. Because Kim is only, 40 years old? And he's believed to have a son who's older than the daughter. And even if he doesn't like that son, he can still have more children. South Korean media noted that his daughter didn't attend official events in Beijing. Analysts suspect that her role is mainly to soften his image. North Korean media doesn't even call her by name. They only address her as our beloved daughter. Kim's own rise was almost accidental because he has two elder brothers. Kim Jong-un, the one who was assassinated, the one who was almost installed by his uncle, was his half-brother, right? Was the oldest. And then he has another brother who is his full brother, same mother. His name is Kim Jong-chol. But Kim Jong-chol preferred music and leisure and doesn't like politics. So that left Kim, the least known, the youngest, suddenly thrown into the spotlight in 2009, with only 2 years of grooming before taking power. At the time, few people believed a man in his late 20s could rule North Korea, but he quickly proved ruthless, very much his father's son. Now he's carefully shaping his image, showcasing his daughter to look more human. On one hand, it's for his image. On the other hand, it's to cover up the true successor. He also has admitted economic failures, right? Trying to show a softer side. So people do not believe that his daughter is going to succeed him. At least that's not the plan. But he wants us to believe that he's going to pass the baton to her just to cover up his real intention or the real successor, because it would be dangerous to expose him prematurely. Now, South Korea's Chosan newspaper noted that while the Xi Jinping-Kim, the summit looked warm on the surface, their official readouts tell a different story. Xinhua claimed Kim praised China's fair stance, thanked Beijing for decades of support, and even talked about expanding economic ties. But North Korea's state media omitted all of that. No thanks, no economics, and more strikingly, no mention of denuclearization. Instead, Pyongyang stuck to vague lines about exchanging views and informing each other of policies. So it's very different from Beijing's version. So the South Korean article said that it didn't sound like there was much agreement between the two, or there was much agreement coming out of that summit. And looking ahead, the South Koreans said that one key date has stood out. That's October 10th, which is the 80th anniversary of the Workers' Party of North Korea. And some people think Xi Jinping might make a surprise visit to Pyongyang. I think that depends on the timing of the CCP's fourth plenum in October. If it falls after the 10th, I don't think Xi Jinping will go, because that will be his most intense period of internal power negotiations. But if the plenum comes earlier and Xi Jinping manages to keep some of his titles, then he might just go. So under the glow of a blood moon, as October approaches, military parades and party plenums ahead, there are still lots of uncertainties